Hey everybody, how's it going? In this video, we're going to take a look at the basics of math rock tapping technique for fingerstyle players and for pick players. So let's start off by taking a look at what to do with our right arm. When it comes to planting the arm, I like to make contact with this part of the guitar using my inner bicep here. So I'll just plant my arm like that, and I'll keep it firmly planted there. For the second part of the technique, we want to take a look at the wrist, and we want to keep a relatively straight wrist. So we don't want too much of a bend going like that. Maybe a little bit of a bend is okay, just like that, but I keep mine relatively straight. And then we want to try and avoid diving in too much with a bend like this here too. So when my arm is planted, I have a little bit of space between the inner part of my wrist and the strings right here near the pickups. Now the space will actually come from the way that I curl my fingers, which we'll talk about in a bit. So you'll probably have some natural space if you follow the directions that are going to come up later. So now we want to move on to taking a look at the hand. And the first thing I want to talk about is anchor points. So whether you're a fingerstyle player or a pick player, you want to have some kind of anchor point in your tapping. So for fingerstyle, I like to anchor using my thumb. This helps to create some stability. So whenever I'm playing anything, I keep my thumb attached to the upper part of the guitar neck here to keep me nice and grounded. And so my contact point is sort of the inside of my thumb, kind of around the first knuckle here. So when I'm tracking along, no matter where I'm playing, I'm using this thumb to keep me balanced. And even if I'm playing up here, I'm still making contact with my thumb, although this time with the tip since we run out of room. Now, for the finger part, we want to make contact with some nice curled fingers, just like you would in your left hand. You want to kind of try and replicate the technique. So if we take a look at how my fingers should look as they're coming in, we want something kind of like this here, where I'm curling my fingers at the top, and then I'm making contact with the pad of my fingers slash kind of the tip here. And our knuckle, our first knuckle here is nice and stable. So when we're making contact here, what we want to do is lift up our finger, strike into the fret, push down, and then kind of dig into it and pull off. So this pull-off thing is going to be a really common thing that you'll do with a lot of the tapping. So for the most part, pull off and draw my finger in towards the palm of my hand. Not super exaggerated, but that's kind of what's going on as it happens. And if it helps, you can kind of try like bouncing on the fret a little bit, but really you just want to try and strike it, dig in, and then pull in towards your palm here. Now, that being said, this is not the only way to tap, so you can actually strike and then just lift your finger off gently without creating a pull-off sound. And this is another way to do things rather than creating pull-offs every single time, and it's going to have a cool musical effect too. So once again, with the fingers, we want to be nice and curled, make contact with the tip slash pad of your finger here. And one correction point, you want to make sure that your first knuckle doesn't bend in or collapse like this, creating this kind of concave look right here in your fingers. This is a really poor way to do things because you'll lose a lot of the strength and power in your fingers here. So you want to make sure that you eliminate that and just come in with these nice curled fingers. Now, when it comes to playing with a pick, the anchor point idea is still going to exist here. Now, I anchor with a slightly different contact point than I do with my fingerstyle technique. So when I'm playing with a pick, I'll anchor with my first finger here, and I'll actually keep my pick grip exactly the same when I'm tapping. So if my pick grip looks like this, I'll anchor with this part of my finger here, right around, I guess, like in between the first and the second knuckle. So when I'm tapping here, you can see that as I move along, I'm still tracking like this to give me some sense of stability. And when it comes to what the fingers actually do, the technique is pretty much the same, right? We want to have those nice curled fingers, and we want to make sure that we're not collapsing when we're tapping. Now, when it comes to using the pick, in terms of the available fingers, For both techniques, you want to use whatever fingers you can. So in this case, if I'm playing with a pick, I want to try to use my middle, my ring, and even my pinky finger if possible. And if I'm playing just with my fingers, doing finger picking and stuff like that, I want to use all of these fingers in the tapping if possible too. Even the pinky, although I really suck at using my pinky. But it's definitely possible to do, and I've seen people do it. And if you're wondering about whether anchoring is really something that you need to do, as there are some players that don't anchor, I would say that I personally like anchoring as it makes me feel more stable, but I suppose it's not something that you necessarily need to do. If you look at a guy like Ichika, he doesn't always anchor, he's got a floating thumb, but I feel like that feels quite unstable. In any case, if there's one thing that I don't like with anchoring, I don't want to see you anchoring with your pinky. This is bad because it, one, eliminates the use of your pinky, and it also really locks up your ring finger since they share the same tendon, which will make it really hard to tap. So if you are going to do some anchoring, please don't anchor with your pinky finger, anchor with your thumb, because it's not going to impede the rest of your fingers. So yeah, that's pretty much the technique. In the next segment, I'll give you guys a couple things that you can try out and practice to help you develop some facility. So in this segment, as said before, we're going to take a look at a couple tapping concepts that you can try out in your practice. But that being said, I just want to mention that I created a PDF/guitar profile with a ton of different tapping concepts, pretty much every single tapping scenario that I can think of. So if you really want to learn the full repertoire of tapping techniques and applications, then be sure to check out my Patreon. Also, there's a bunch of other tapping exercises for alternate tunings, and I have all kinds of riffs and stuff like that. So again, be sure to check that out. But anyways, the first thing that I want to start out with is just the basic idea of trying to get all of your fingers involved. So if we're tapping using a fingerstyle technique here, a good thing to do is just tap along the 12th fret, and we're actually just going to use these 3 fingers because I'm terrible with the pinky. And we're just going to work on producing a tap and an open note, just like this here. So this is the most basic tapping thing that you can do. And it's a good exercise even if you've been tapping for a while, as it really helps you to feel the strength in each one of your fingers. So if you feel like one of your fingers is weaker than the other, then you can zero in on it and try and put some work in on that finger alone. So for me, since I usually actually tap with a pick, my first finger is actually the weakest. So if I want to do a little workout, I can actually just tap and practice using just this finger alone. So the next concept is the idea of adding harmony to our tapping. So our left hand plays a big role in our tapping sound. So what we can try doing, and as you probably heard earlier, is we can play a chord in our left hand, and that will supply the tonality for our tapping here. So I recommend that you just take a chord and try holding it while tapping some notes along your fretboard and see if you can get some sounds that are nice. So as you can see, I'm just taking a chord like this, and I'm just tapping some stuff. A lot of the time along the 12th fret here, since I'm in the key of G, it's an easy way to get some sounds that are really nice and easy to play. So anyways, hold a chord down and just see what happens when you have a tonality to work with. So the second idea is going to be a little bit of a left hand, right hand interaction thing. And this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but I think this is a really good thing to practice in order to develop some speed and facility. So I call this the Van Halen triplet, which kind of sounds like this here. So this is like the kind of sound you would have heard in like Eruption, like etc. So this is a really good thing to practice, as cheesy as it sounds here, and we can make it sound really cool. This is good because it gets your right hand moving, and so the idea here, just to explain the mechanic real quick, is that I'm anchoring down with my first finger. I'm going to tap with my 12th, or on the 12th fret on my right hand, pull off, and then hammer on the 7th fret here of the same string. And we can do all kinds of these little things here. But to go back to what I was saying before, this is really useful as it just helps to develop speed in your left hand and some coordination. And you'll find that you'll use this mechanic quite a lot in a variety of other things that you'll play. So one concept that you can try out is the idea of fretting chords with your left hand and using the available fingers in that chord to create some extra sounds. And that mechanic is more or less the same as just doing this here. So getting really familiar with this idea will help with that. And when it comes to this gesture, you can make it more interesting by just playing around with it. So for example, if we subject it to some string skips, it sounds a lot more interesting. I could take some of the notes in this pattern here. If I'm playing all of my notes along the same string, I could just move one of my fingers here. So for example, my finger that hammers onto the 7th fret here could be moved to the 7th fret instead of the D string. It can move to the E string. And I can use my pinky here. Then all of a sudden the mechanic is way more interesting. Also, we can move this finger around as well too to create some more dynamic harmony. So once again, we've got this Van Halen triplet thing. Definitely recommend learning that. The next idea is the idea of a slide. So all we have to do is tap and then really dig in and then slide to another fret. So we want to tap and we don't want to lift our finger off. If we lift our finger off, we're going to lose the momentum here of the sound, and then we're not going to be able to do anything with it. So if I tap and then slide, I can create a cool sound. And then once we get to the end, we can do a little pull off. That's a really common sound that you'll hear in math rock. So once again, you're going to push in, you try and dig in, and then you're going to slide. Really try to put some emphasis on the middle part of the slide. So as you're actually sliding along, don't just be too quick to like get to your destination. Like really make sure that you're keeping an even amount of pressure as you go, as that'll lead to a nicer tone, I find. Also, if you're working on the coordination of a single finger, I find slides are actually a good thing to practice, as there's quite a bit of coordination needed to just jump around to different frets. So when you're just kind of like improvising and noodling like this, if you have a weaker finger, try and subject it to a little bit of slide practice, as that's going to be great for your accuracy. So anyways, those are a couple ideas. Once again, if you guys need some more things to practice and learn, then be sure to check out the Patreon page. But that being said, the 3 things that we just looked at right here will get you pretty far. So if you try and implement some of these ideas and maybe combine them into a single riff, you'll end up with something pretty cool. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Hope it did help, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.